Next, it's divided the capital since its inception, and opposing politicians still haven't given up on trying to bring down ULEZ. New figures obtained by Motorway UK show more than £5 million in daily charges were racked up in the first week of the expansion. Money, the Mayor says, will go towards improving the transport network. But this week, the MP for Dartford will bring a bill to Parliament in hopes of overturning the expansion. Our political correspondent Simon Harris reports.
In most places, the ULEZ boundary is marked by warning signs, but in Harefield, there's also a red box on top of a post bearing a familiar face. At eye level for drivers is a decidedly unseasonal greeting. In the next street, a ULEZ camera has had its lens covered up with stickers and plastic. It's a measure of the anti-ULEZ feeling among some Londoners. Now a Conservative MP is proposing a new law to force Sadiq Khan into a U-turn.
He didn't put it in his manifesto when he stood for the last mayoral elections. He didn't put it in his transport strategy, and even in his consultation, the majority of people said they didn't want it. So he does not have a mandate to do this. And what my bill will do is to overturn the expansion of the ULEZ zone back to the South Circular.
The ULEZ was extended to cover all 32 London boroughs on August the 29th. Sadiq Khan is unlikely to be troubled by this latest attempt to reverse the ULEZ extension. He's already seen off a challenge in the High Court and resisted pressure from his own party. City Hall said with the help of the Mayor's £160 million scrappage scheme, 95% of all vehicles seen driving in London on an average day now meet clean air standards and do not need to pay the daily ULEZ charge. But according to the car sales website Motorway, the first week of the extended zone earned Transport for London more than £5 million in charges. ULEZ supporters insist it's not about the money.
The first zone that was in central London reduced nitrogen oxide by 50%, which is a massive reduction. The next expansion that went out to the North and South Circular reduced that further by 20%.
The proposed change to the law will be put before Parliament in the form of a private member's bill. But unless they're supported by the government, private members' bills rarely succeed. Simon Harris, ITV News, Harefield.
The Mayor has warned a new fleet of Piccadilly line trains could be under threat because of the latest cash crisis at Transport for London. Sadiq Khan says TfL is facing another shortfall of £500 million, and the current funding deal ends in March, so is once again calling on the government to bail them out. Here's our political correspondent Simon Harris.
On the Piccadilly line, the trains have seen better days. They're some of the shabbiest on the Underground, but there is light at the end of the tunnel. A new generation of tube trains is on order and should start arriving in 2025. Unless, it seems, Transport for London can't afford to pay for them. London's Mayor says TfL needs a fresh government handout of £500 million.
If we don't get that support from the government, what it means is we can't get new stock, but also we've got to keep the older stock for much longer as well.
Are the new Piccadilly line trains at risk?
They are. Some of the options TfL are looking into is suspension, cancellation, delay. All those things will add to an increased cost later on.
This is the new factory at Goole on Humberside, where many of the 94 new trains will be built. It should mean jobs for 700 people. In an effort to put pressure on ministers to come up with the money, TfL's Commissioner Andy Lord wrote to the local Tory MP Andrew Percy last month saying a lack of capital funding would impact the Goole development. But that direct approach might have backfired. The MP told us, "I won't be playing into Sadiq's games ahead of his re-election next year. That's what this is about." Mr Percy also said he hadn't seen the letter from the Commissioner. TfL's finances were derailed by COVID in 2020 when its income from fares dried up. Its money troubles are a legacy of lockdown. But the Mayor's opponents say his policy of freezing fares has also come home to roost.
He has been in charge of TfL for over 8 years now, and he has really brought it to its knees. He made some very, very poor decisions at the beginning of his term, and he's paying for them now.
TfL and the Mayor argue that long-term funding from the government is essential. Without it, there's little chance of ordering new Bakerloo line trains or Piccadilly line signals.
You can't invest, and Britain needs to invest to drive up productivity, unless you get long-term investment. And you can't do that on an annual cycle in the way that the government often, and not only for TfL I might say, often treats other parts of the public sector.
Tonight, the Department for Transport said it had given TfL £6.5 billion since 2020, and it's up to the Mayor to make sure TfL can deliver London's transport services. Simon Harris, ITV News.
Let's bring in our political correspondent Simon Harris, who's with me now. Simon, for Boris Johnson, COVID is going to be the defining narrative of his premiership, isn't it? Do you think that apology this morning will help him in any way with that?
Well, we heard from bereaved relatives there who don't accept his apology. There's the chance that whatever he said wouldn't have changed their minds. He's a politician who divides opinion. He knows that there are those who disagree with him, dislike him, distrust him, loathe him, are not going to be persuaded otherwise. But it is important for him to put on record his version of events. He said at the beginning he was glad to be at the inquiry, and even if it's an uncomfortable couple of days, this is his chance to tell it as he saw it. For example, he was challenged about the rows and chaos inside Downing Street, and he said he rather liked the fact that there was an argumentative culture in Number 10 because he thought it was better for the country. Now, Boris Johnson is no longer the MP for Uxbridge. He has no plans to run for Mayor of London again, but as far as we know, he still has political ambitions. So his legacy is important to him, and the inquiry's findings might or might not be kind to him, but this was his chance to try to influence the outcome.
The evidence continues. Simon, thank you very much.
But first, the Olympics could be returning to London for a record fourth time after a spot of hinting from the Mayor. With ready-built venues and a track record hosting big events, the capital would be a serious contender. A new bid would still come with new problems, though, not least where to house the 10,000 athletes, since their accommodation from last time round's been sold off. But one former advisor to the Mayor may have the solution, as our political correspondent Simon Harris reports.
11 years after London 2012, a new generation of athletes are making the most of the Olympic legacy. The London Aquatics Centre was one of the purpose-built venues designed to last, which also means it could be recycled as a future Olympic facility.
If I'm re-elected, I'll be setting up a committee to explore whether we can bring back the Olympics to London in either 2036 or 2040.
Sadiq Khan first floated the idea of another London Olympics during his election campaign in 2021, and he still believes in the idea.
I think the key thing is to recognise the possibility of a green Olympics coming to London because we've already got the infrastructure. So we're looking into the feasibility of this, and as soon as we've got some news, I'll of course share it with you.
It might be a distant memory, but for millions of Londoners, the summer of 2012 was a golden time. The weather was kind, the transport network behaved, and the medals rolled in. The Olympic Park felt like a magic place. And in the park today, there was plenty of enthusiasm for the Games to return.
I think the Olympics should come back to London. I think it's good for the country, I think it's good for the economy.
More people's going to come to the stadium, it's going to be good. It's going to be good for the area, bring it back.
Yeah, it'll just be a lot of culture brought back into the country.
The 2012 Games cost more than £9 billion, but that sort of spending is now regarded as extravagant. Instead, the International Olympic Committee wants sustainable games, which could make London well placed. The London Stadium is home to West Ham, but the running track can be reinstated. Other venues like the Velodrome are available. However, the Athletes' Village is now home to almost 3,000 families, so can't be reused. But one former City Hall advisor thinks the answer is Old Oak Common, next to the new HS2 station.
You could use the opportunity of a new Games to underwrite more investment in infrastructure there and ultimately to build some fantastic new housing there. So I think that's actually, a real plus for a bid, the possibility of adding an exciting regeneration and housing opportunity.
The IOC has yet to name a host city for the 2036 Olympics and Paralympics. But realistically, London's best hope might be 2040 or 2044.
Well, Simon's going to be discussing that and more in the late debate tonight, aren't you, Si?
Charlene, when Sadiq Khan first suggested a new bid for the Olympics, it was dismissed by his opponents as an election stunt. On the late debate, we'll explore whether there's the political backing for another London Games. I'll be joined by MPs Felicity Buchan, Catherine Weston from the House of Lords, Baroness Susan Kramer. Plus, will the Prime Minister's tough new immigration bill stop his party tearing itself apart? And Transport for London's got the begging bowl out again. It wants £500 million from the government. How should London's transport network be funded? That's the late debate here on ITV1 after news at 10.